Welcome to our Starseed series. I'm Urania with Urania Heart Metaphysics.
And I'm Jackie B with Grow with Jackie B LLC in the Free and Fully Expressed movement.
This video series is where we break down the Starseed soul groups, sharing their key essences to spark your remembrance. And just keep in mind, you will likely resonate with many of these Starseed soul groups. However, there may be a few that are more dominant at this time in your life.
And before we dive into this trio for this video, I want to make something super clear. This this group of star seeds are not about fear. They're not about labeling people as dark, dangerous, or wrong, right? And it's because this is one of the most misunderstood groups of star seeds. It's not about separating good from bad. It's really about understanding the intensity of how we hold power, intelligence, and polarity moving through the human nervous system, right? Some people carry more charge than others, some more contrast, some more awareness of the shadow. It's all needed and all serves the human collective. It doesn't make them broken. It doesn't mean that they're here to cause harm, so to say. It means they're here to help learn integration, not avoid it. So in this video, we're going to explore three starseed lineages that are often misunderstood and misrepresented: Orion, Draco, and Zeta. So as you listen, stay in your body, notice your breath, let your feet connect to the ground. Nothing here requires you to claim anything. It's all about understanding patterns, not identities. So it's really about allowing, like, hey, if there's a trigger, or even if you have a strong resistance of, oh no, that can't be me, that charge is a sacred trigger for a reason, and there's something there for you to play with if you so choose. So let's first dive into Orion. Orion starseeds are all about polarity, depth, and lived wisdom. So Orion's energy really is shaped through contrast, right? These star seeds often experience intensity early in life, strong emotions, power struggles, situations that force them to confront both light and shadow. They don't learn through theory. They learn through experience. And because of this, the Orion star seeds are often drawn to depth work like psychology, shadow work, healing, truth seeking, right? Even if they don't use those terms or those words, it's always the undercurrent of what they do. They tend to be the ones that will ask the hard questions that everyone may think, but they're afraid to say out loud. They often don't feel satisfied with surface level answers. And they really want to know what is really happening underneath, not just the surface level words. So the shadow of Orion star seeds is really this internal conflict, right? This feeling that you're being like almost tug of war between two extremes. There's a struggle with control, intensity, and self-judgment, especially. But Orion star seeds, they aren't a dark lineage. It's really a training ground for integration. It's much needed because the gift that they hold is this wisdom that is earned through lived experience, so to say. So the integration when it comes to these star seeds is really when they stop fighting their depth and they learn how to hold it with compassion. Because Orion star seeds really that they heal their energy by when they allow polarity to become understanding and not in an internal war.
So, the indicators of Orion star seeds in the birth chart include themes of polarity, depth, and embodied wisdom. Signs that reflect these themes the most are Scorpio, Libra, and Cancer. So these are most important if your rising sun and moon are placed in these signs, or there are two or more planets in these signs. So, Cancer, let's start with Cancer. Cancer has the experience and the ability to tune into their deeper emotions through their cycle of, say, shadow work and integration. So cancers are known for, of course, being very emotional as they're connected to the moon, and they're known to go in their hermit modes, right? And in those modes of the hermit or It could be looked at as isolation or shutting themselves off to their environment. They are exploring the deeper parts of themselves and really being present with their emotions. And when we go in really deep, we tend to see like, the shadowy or bad or quote unquote ugly parts of ourselves. But being in that presence and sitting with it gives space for that integration and gives the ability for that embodied wisdom to take place. Libra is probably a surprising one because most of the time people associate Libra with, of course, beauty and Venus and lighthearted things and music and so forth. But what I have really noticed with Libras is that their soul is here to learn about balance, about harmony. So 9 times out of 10, they tend to first experience those polarities, so those extremes, and experience that internal conflict to help them really tune in and not only understand or feel balance, but also to embody that experience and what it means to be integrated or to be balanced or to be in that essence of harmony. And Scorpio, of course, Scorpio probably came to mind for a lot of you. But Scorpio is the sign of intensity, is the sign of like the shadow and, just going into the darkness. And it can be kind of like that quote unquote dark sign. And I would say Scorpio more than likely has the strongest representation because there's that ability to withstand the intensity, withstand the chaos and hardship, not only in its environment, but within itself. And so it wants to peel back the layers and go deeper and deeper and deeper to see like what's beneath, what's at the bottom here, there's that core desire and passion to really tune in and tap into the deeper depths of themselves and of anything that they feel passionate about. And naturally, when you go through that journey of going through the darkness, through the shadow, there is that dark night of the soul. And there is that experience of internal conflict within yourself. And through that, they are able to really receive that light or that wisdom and then integrate that and embody that. And so the planets to take into consideration for the Orion star seeds are the moon. The moon has their cycle or represents the cycles of illumination, through the shadow, the integration, and essentially that illumination of the subconscious, the memories of not only, your lifetime, your family, your lineage, but also it can go more into your spiritual lineage and those deeper roots there. So there's this constant cycle of going deep and then having that illumination and then integration on so many layers. And Jupiter, again, Jupiter might not be a planet that we would directly look to as far as an Orion connection, but Jupiter is a representation of embodied wisdom, of the abundance, of, the light and benevolent energy. But as we experience not only on this planet, but on other planets, is that in order to really reach that point of embodied wisdom, you go through your challenges, you go through the darkness. Even if the darkness isn't something bad, the darkness can be the unknown, right? And Jupiter is associated with that higher intelligence, higher awareness, and that comes through shadow work and integration. And so finally, Pluto, as I'm sure a lot of you would assume, Pluto also holds a strong Orion starseed connection, as it is the planet of the shadow work, of the unconscious, of repressed emotions, repressed trauma. Like we tend to associate Pluto with karma and, the shadow energy. But with Pluto, not only is there the depths of the shadow and going into that deeper journey of the unconscious, but as you go through that journey, you will also tap into your gifts that haven't been realized, the gifts that you didn't know was there because they're at the bottom of, like, they're beneath even the shadow and what was unknown. right? So there's a strong representation there. So you can already see that there is the light and the higher intelligence, the wisdom that comes through with the darker aspects, or maybe the more challenging moments, or the unknown, the uncertainty. And so there's really that strong polarity experience within this Orion Starseed soul group. So again, take note that these themes may show up as strengths, but also they can show up as, of course, shadow points that ultimately provide opportunities for connecting more deeply with Earth.
Now we're on to Draco starseeds. This starseed group is all about power, authority, and survival intelligence. So Draco energy really works with power, not a fantasy like type power. It's really about real world power. So like authority, leadership, and survival. People with this energy really often have complicated relationships with control. They may have um, used that power or had that power used over them, or they might have been forced to hold power early on in life where normally you wouldn't, right? And because of this, they can feel hyper aware of dominance, hierarchy, and authority. Their nervous system really is in tune to who's in control and who isn't. The shadow of this Draco energy really is control equals perfection, or not perfection, protection. It's like clamping down, holding too tight, trying to manage everything to stay safe, right? But Draco energy isn't about dominance, so to say. Really, when it's integrated, it becomes about stewardship, the ability to hold power responsibly, ethically, and calmly. So these Draco starseeds actually have the potential to become the strong leaders once they integrate and feel safe. They don't have to be the loud leaders, they're the grounded ones, right? The gift they hold is that authority with integrity. The integration comes when power is regulated through the body and not through force or fear, right? So Draco energy heals when control softens into that trust.
Indicators of Draco star seeds in the birth chart include themes of power, authority, and survival intelligence, as just mentioned. So the signs that reflect these themes the most are Aries, Taurus, Scorpio, and Capricorn. And these signs are so like deeply anchored in power dynamics and control. It's hard to even separate them because they all have like the same energy in this regard, like the passion, the desire, and also not having the control or not being in power can really be debilitating for them and create like fear and anxiety. So Aries, as I've mentioned in several of our Starseed videos, Aries is like very instinctual in the moment, very vigilant, and it is all about survival and being able to act when they need to act, being able to fight when they need to fight, or whatever is necessary in the moment. That is really important. So freedom and being in control and being the leader is very important to Aries, right? So they're very courageous. They're generally the first ones to act. There's a saying that I personally say with Aries, they act first and think, like act now, think later type archetype. And so that is all based on they're very connected to their instinct. And so they have to be in control of themselves, of their own environment, in order to feel safe and secure. Taurus, Taurus's energy is focused on survival. It's rooted in survival. And again, I've mentioned that this is more centered around the physical, the physicality of their life, whether it is food, shelter, any kind of resource. It could be money even, but they really have a strong grip and need for control on that. And they want to have their things. They need to have their resources, or else they feel debilitated. And so Taurus is known to be a sign even where it's hard to get them to change. It's hard to really, in a way, control them because they're so, in some ways, stubborn, right? But they're very grounded in what is needed for them, right? And so they have to have that control and that power, right? And so as we mentioned, there are like the shadow points might come up where individuals may struggle with this, right? With finding this stability or really having a hard time controlling their environment and their resources, right? And that can come up as a Draco theme. Scorpio, of course, Scorpio is going to be on here as far as that intense power dynamic and control. They're definitely known to be the sign that it revolves around like power dynamics, so to speak, and having that control and just having their own sovereignty, right? And so they tend to keep, their emotions close to home. They tend to be very private because revealing themselves and having those, walls or those layers exposed of themselves really like it's almost a survival thing for them because that is a sense creating vulnerability if people can truly see what is at the core of their being, right? That sensitivity, yeah. Capricorn. Capricorn's another big power dynamic sign. It is known to be the authority as far as the zodiac signs. And so authority, control, safety is really important. So Capricorn's the archetype that is really concerned with boundaries and structures and so forth in order to keep them safe themselves or say like a group or a society that's really important to them. And so vulnerability is a challenge for them, right? They don't like to be vulnerable. And so these four signs are very strong reflections of the Draco starseed soul groups. So the planets that are centered around or reflected of Draco starseeds can be the sun, as the sun does hold that strong leadership role. It is the center of our solar system, or in the case of astrology, it is the center, right? And everything kind of revolves around that. And so there is a desire or this natural ability to have the power, to be in control, to set the authority, and have that strong leadership. Saturn, similar to Capricorn, of course, has that strong anchor and power and authority. That survival intelligence is really strong. They hold their authority with integrity. So Saturn wants that mastery, wants things to go well. And so when they have these points of leadership, their way is the most ideal way, right? And they have the control on how things are created, how things are structured. And generally, when it's in an integrated, harmonious, space or vibration, that is in consideration of the group, of whatever is within the boundaries that Saturn governs. Pluto is a planet that is very strongly connected to power dynamics, right? It is the planet that is in control of or represents like the power struggles, the power over, power under. As I said in another video, Pluto essentially can make things really small or it can blow things out of proportion, right? So there's like that strong polarity within Pluto, which can create the friction. And even when you are working with Pluto or its representation as far as the unconscious, it's like you have the really intense shadow, but then you have the really intense light and realization and the awakening of your gifts through that journey through the darkness. So it really creates this strong power dynamic between the intensity and the fear, but then the gift and the own personal power. So it really holds this Draco starseed intensity around power, authority, and survival intelligence.
Let's now move into the Zeta Reticuli starseeds. They're all about intelligence, systems, and nervous system sensitivity. So Zeta energy really is highly analytical. These people think in systems, in patterns, structures, cause and effect relationships. Emotion isn't absent from these starseeds. It's just not their primary language they communicate through. So these starseeds learn early on that thinking is safer than feeling. So analyzing becomes a protection mechanism, so to say. And because of this, they may struggle with emotional overwhelm or dissociation or nervous system sensitivity, right? Their mind moves so quickly, their body may lag behind. So they're often misunderstood as cold or detached. But when in reality is what happening is their system is wired for cognition first. So the shadow of the Zeta star seeds is this disconnection from the body. Living up here, living up here because down here, right? Like up here, because down here feels too intense for them. So the gift they hold though is this beautiful, rich intelligence and the clarity needed when you can separate from the emotions for a minute, like you step out of the emotion and you can see it with a clearer light from a objective, is that the right word, like objective point of view, without being so involved, like enmeshed with it. You can step out and see that without being completely tied into the situation. That clarity is needed as well, right? So really what happens to integrate this energy of the star seed, it comes when thinking and feeling can coexist together. It doesn't have to be one or other. It doesn't have to be an absolute, right?
Exactly. So the indicators of Zeta Reticuli, starseeds, in the birth chart include themes of technology, intelligence, and systems and structures. So the signs that reflect these themes the most are Gemini, Virgo, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So just a reminder that these are most important if your rising sun and moon are placed in these signs, or there are two or more planets in these signs. So as expressed in another starseed soul group, Gemini and Virgo hold the same energy. One is expressed more outwardly, which is Gemini, and Virgo is more internally. And so Gemini, or both of them, are very highly analytical, right? Gemini is very technical in the way it organizes things, the way it structures like the external world. And they both are really good at compartmentalizing things, right? And so in that sense, emotions can go in this little box here while other things are being tended to. So they're able to, there's that separation in a sense of like the emotions and just what in the technology, the intelligence. And I sense that the goal, right, is that they are needing to integrate all of that, right? Integrating the emotions all together with the intelligence and the rationale of things. And so there is that emotional suppression that comes with Gemini and Virgo. So, speaking of emotional suppression, Capricorn is also really good at doing that, Capricorn archetype. And they tend to separate themselves from emotions because of the vulnerability factor. Capricorns are very focused on things going well, and getting things like structured in a specific way, mainly for efficiency. And emotions can be really messy and unpredictable and in some ways uncontrollable. And so they are very good at detaching from their emotions. And they're also known to be very cold. Like Capricorns are known to be a very cold, is known to be a very cold sign, and stoic and detached. And that is in a way to keep them grounded so that they can really focus on the task at hand and create the structures that they need to create. And in that way, their certain nervous system, and also this is the same for Gemini and Virgo, they do have nervous system sensitivity because it's so much focused on the mind, and not really embodying the emotions, but seeing it as an external part of self, that at some point that's all broken down and they have to tune to the emotions, right? And so they're kind of tiptoeing into that imbalance, of like a mental breakdown in some ways. So Aquarius, very similar to Capricorn, there is the detachment. Aquarius, probably similar to Gemini energy. They can understand the emotions. They understand how it works. They understand what it means. But with that detachment, they don't embody it. They don't really integrate it and feel the intelligence of the emotions. And so they tend to naturally just disassociate, detach, because they're so in the mind. And Pisces is probably an unexpected sign here. However, Pisces, that archetype, is really good at disembodying themselves from the physical body, from the emotions, especially if it's something that is um traumatic, right? Something that really brings them down into like a shadowy experience or feeling, the heavy emotions essentially they want to disembody themselves from. And so they tend to hold that shadow point of what it can look like when you're existing within all the emotions, but you are disembodied and detached from them and you're off somewhere else, right? And that detachment, like I mentioned before, can create that nervous system sensitivity because they're so in the mind, or elsewhere with Pisces it's more in the mind, like somewhere else, like in a fantasy, right? So you get lost in the mind, and at some point there is that strong imbalance within the nervous system, within the body, within the emotions that causes that darker point, right?
So bringing this all together, lineage doesn't equal morality, right? It's really about the integration. The integration is what determines the expression of the energy, right? So no lineage is good or bad. No one is superior or condemned, right? What matters is how regulated, embodied, and integrated the system is. So if this video stirred discomfort or curiosity or relief, that's okay. You don't need to resolve anything right now. You don't need to identify with anything. Just notice how your system is relating to that power, that intensity, and that intelligence. Because this work isn't about discovering what you are, it's really about learning how to live well with what you carry energetically. So it's the depth that becomes the wisdom, the power that becomes your integrity, and the intelligence that becomes your connection, because nothing here makes you dangerous. What you're learning is how to become safe with your own depth.
Perfect. So thank you for watching, and be sure to check out the other videos in our Starseed series. And if you like this video, of course, like the video, please, and subscribe to our channels.